Guna, by the three modes, the modes of material nature, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Arani, by Arani wood. Chanda, covered. Chit, of knowledge. Ushmapaya, unto he whose fire. Tatshobha, of the agitation of the modes of material nature. Vipurjita, outside. Manasaya, unto he whose mind. Naishkarmya bhavena, because of the stage of spiritual understanding. Vivarjita, in those who give up. Agama, Vedic principles. Swayam, personally. Prakashaya, unto he who is manifest. Namakarami, I offer my respectful obeisances. Translation, my Lord, as the fire in Arani wood is covered, you and your unlimited knowledge are covered by the material modes of nature. Your mind, however, is not attentive to the activities of the modes of nature. Those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge are not subject to the regulative principles directed in the Vedic literatures. Because such advanced souls are transcendental, you personally appear in their pure minds. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. In Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, text 11, it is said, Tesham evanukam partham aham agyana jam tamaha nasham yatma bhavasto gyana deepena bhashvata. For a devotee who has taken the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart, the Lord gives spiritual enlightenment known as Jnana Deepa, by special mercy from within. This Jnana Deepa is compared to the fire hidden within Arani wood. To perform fire sacrifices, great sages previously did not ignite a fire directly. The fire would be invoked from the Arani wood. Similarly, all living entities are covered by the modes of material nature, and the fire of knowledge can be ignited only by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when one takes Him within one's heart. Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. If one takes seriously the lotus feet of Krishna, who is seated within one's heart, the Lord eradicates all ignorance. By the torch of knowledge, one immediately understands everything properly by the special mercy of the Supreme Lord and becomes self-realized. In other words, although a devotee may externally not be very well educated, because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives him enlightenment from within. If the Lord gives enlightenment from within, how can one be in ignorance? Therefore, the allegation of the Mayavadis that the devotional path is for the less or the unintelligent or uneducated is untrue. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana sarvargunastatra samasate suraha. It's from the Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 18th chapter, text 12. If one becomes an unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord, he automatically manifests all good qualities. Such a devotee is above the instructions of the Vedas. He is a Paramahamsa. Even without going through the Vedic literature, a devotee becomes pure and enlightened by the mercy of the Lord. Therefore, my Lord, the devotee says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So, Gunarane chana chidushmapaya takshobha vispurjita manasaya naishkarmya bhavena vivarjita gama swayam prakashaya namas karome. So, Om Ganat Timidanda Shah Garanjana Shlakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the example that Srila Prabhupada gives about Arani wood is very interesting because, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, that's how they would start a fire. They didn't have any matches or electrical stuff or anything like that. I remember just a little humorous thing, that there was one devotee who wanted to show his expertise in lighting a fire without matches or anything like that. So what he did is he hid an electrical igniter inside the wood. And he pronounced some mantras and he pushed a little button under his seat. And then all of a sudden the fire came out and everyone was impressed and they gave him big donations. So you can try that if you like. It will definitely impress everybody here in Fiji if you do that. And it's not against the principles either. It's part of preaching. Anyway, I'm suggesting that. So, anyway, so what this indicates is that the potential, so wood, we're talking about potential, like if you ever studied science, there's potential, there's kinetic energy and there's potential energy. I mean, I'll give you an example. A potential energy, let's say you have a weight, some big rock, like someone put a rock on my table here this morning, and they thought it was a Shalagram Shila. So let's say you have some big heavy rock on the roof there. So it's not exhibiting any energy right now. It's just sitting there. But it has a potential because it's on the roof and there's a distance between it and the ground. So without much exertion, you can push the rock a little bit and it'll exhibit what we call kinetic energy. Kinetic means like something active. So it comes down because of the potential, the gravity that's there. So that's what we mean, potential energy. So wood has that potential energy of fire. Fire is in the wood, but it has to be awakened. And of course, the Irani wood, it's awakened by mantras. But, or we may awaken it with a match or something like that, but the potential is there. So in the same way, the potential of Krishna consciousness is there in the heart. Jivera swarupa nicha Krishna das. I mean, what does that mean? Jivera, the jiva soul, swarup, his actual form, his actual nature is Krishna das. He doesn't have an actual nature of being in the material world because previously he was with Krishna in the spiritual world. Exactly what he was doing, that's not described. Sometimes you have people who say that we were never with Krishna. We popped out of the Brahmajyoti or popped out of the Tatashta, whatever that is. Tatashta means the marginal energy of the Lord. But none of the acharyas mention that. We actually are here because we did something wrong. Krishna Bharhirmukha, that's the covering. We turned our face away from Krishna. Or as Prabhupada gives the example, like a little girl wants to imitate the mother, and she's given a clay stove. So we saw the father, Krishna, and we were thinking, I would also like to dance with gopis or whatever. And then Krishna says, all right, you can have your own gopis, but they're going to be Durga for you. Like Ravana. He thought, I would also like to have Sita. Perfect example. And he got Maya Sita. He got Durga. So people sometimes imitate Krishna, and of course in the material world is a whole imitation of Krishna. And even the Sahajas, they're trying to imitate the great devotees, and they think that they will actually become great devotees by imitating the great devotees. Just like we heard yesterday, I'm not going to repeat all the stories someone told me because it's pretty obnoxious. But anyway, we heard that some great acharya dressed up as a gopi one day. And his wife came in and said, "What are you doing, my dear husband?" Because he said, "I'm cooking for Krishna," or something like that. This is nonsense. There is no example of any of our acharyas dressing up, exhibiting this material body like the spiritual body. That's called Saki Beki. Saki Beki means it's a deviant Vaishnava sect where people think that they'll become spiritually advanced by dressing up like some resident of Vrindavan. Especially men, they dress up like gopis. And they are the ugliest gopis you've ever seen in your life. Have you ever seen a gopi with a beard, a little shadow on the face? Or a man with lipstick on? It is disgusting. I mean, just like, anyway, in the West, we call that, I don't know if you ever heard this saying before, drag queen. No, you haven't heard that. People actually pay money in the Western world to go to a bar to see men dressed up like women. You've heard of that before? No? They don't have that here. You're not so advanced in Fiji. We will introduce this system. It's like Prabhupada said, no one will go to see a dog barking. But if a man barks like a dog, then everyone will be very happy to see it. They'll pay money. That's true. Actually, sometimes a staged hypnotist will actually tell someone they're a dog and they'll bark like a dog and everybody will be watching it and think it's wonderful. So if a man dresses up like a woman, people will pay money to see it. It's called a drag queen. Anyway, I'm not going to get more into that. So you cannot become Krishna conscious by doing things with the material body like that. Even though someone came yesterday, the day before, in the last week, was preaching to the devotees like that here. Can you imagine that? Preaching to the devotees, you have to do this. But actually our system is service. Sevan mukhe jivado swayameva spurachida. Atakshi Krishna namadi nabhavet grayam indriya. With these senses, you can't really come in contact with Krishna, the material senses, because they're upadis. They're coverings, designations. But swayameva spurachida, by serving, atakshi Krishna namadi nabhavet grayam indriya. But by serving with the jiva, with the tongue, especially preaching Krishna consciousness, then you can purify yourself so you can actually become Krishna conscious. So the way you purify yourself is by getting the mercy, as Prabhupada mentions here. Getting the mercy. The mercy comes from Krishna's devotee. And then your spiritual life becomes ignited. So another point here in this verse, which is quite interesting, I thought it was bearing some comment or explanation. It says in the verse, those who advance in spiritual knowledge are not subject to the regulative principles directed in the Vedic literatures. Wow. Okay, so I'm advanced. I'm not subjected to any regulative principles. Haribo! No more rising early. No more of this. Jai! Whew. I've been serving for so many years, 50 years of getting up for Mangalarti, and now it's time, I'm 67, to collect my FMPF, and just retire. Of course, here in Fiji, you can retire at 55, right? That's pretty good. So I'm retiring because I'm advanced. No, that's not really what that means. What that means is that the secondary Vedic injunctions in the Agamas and the Pancharatras are not necessary for someone who's on the path, there's two things, on the path of Krishna consciousness to follow. I mean, there's some injunctions, for example, in the Hari Bhakti Vilas that we definitely don't follow, like not eating carrots. I mean, I think everybody here eats carrots one time or other. So many injunctions we don't follow, or of course observing Chaturmasha or Kartik, you're just supposed to eat once a day, no spices, no ghee, nothing like that. You just put your hands behind your back and eat like a duck. I mean, there's so many injunctions even that are mentioned for devotees that we don't follow. There's time, place, and manner injunctions. So that's one understanding of that. Another understanding is that there are certain advanced souls who are avadutas. And those avadutas, they don't preach. Because those who preach, they have to act on the platform of Vaidhi. Even though they're not on the platform of Vaidhi Bhakti, of course Vaidhi Bhakti means rules and regulations. Even though they're not on the platform, they're on a higher platform, but they follow Vaidhi Bhakti like the lines on a stone described by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. You never see the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan giving up and becoming avadutas. Sometimes at the end of one's pastimes in this world, you find a great devotee doing that, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur did at the end, but then he wasn't preaching anymore. And sometimes you'll find great devotees who do that and they don't preach. That's the Babajis. I mean, one story comes to mind of a great devotee like that who really didn't follow any rules and regulations, was named Vamsi Das Babaji. Maybe some of you heard of him before. And I'll tell you a little bit about what he did, and you'll become bewildered just by hearing about his pastimes. He was considered to be an absolutely pure devotee by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Although Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a Goshtanandi, not a Bhajananandi. There's two types of devotees. Goshtanandi is one who preaches. He primarily concentrates on the Bhagavat Vidhi and preaching Krishna consciousness. That's the quick path to become Krishna conscious. If you want the slow path, you become a Bhajananandi. That's really slow. Of course, when you're a pure devotee, you don't have to worry about slow or fast anymore. You've gone there. I mean, just like you can walk to Lotoka from here. How long would it take? Several days, probably. 2 or 3 days. You could do that. And I think you had some Padayatra when Bhakti Marg was here. He did that. So, yeah, you can do that if you like. Especially if you're chanting Harinam, it's a pretty good idea. Or you can take a car, which will take you roughly like 3-4 hours. I remember when Bhimsen was driving, it took 2 hours. He was teaching me how to chant purely. You know, oh my God, how can you take a curve at that speed? You know, I was shaking the whole time. So, or you can take a plane, it's a little quicker. Or you could travel at the speed of the mind, right? And then you're immediately there. Just like if I think of Krishna Kaliya, I'm there. So there's different methods or speeds of traveling. So the Goshtanandi process, where you serve the mission, we were talking about this yesterday, where you serve the mission of the spiritual master, specifically Srila Prabhupada for all of us, you serve his mission. That's a very quick process. And the Bhajananandi process, where you just try, you talk to all your friends, you know, what type of gopi am I? Saki, you know. That's a very slow process. And ultimately, you'll have to go on Sankirtan anyway, after it's all over. So, anyway, so let's talk about this one Bhajananda devotee, who's already a pure devotee. So, we don't follow his process. It was named Vamsi Das Babaji. So, Vamsi Das Babaji, he was born in a family of fishermen. And actually that was his occupation, a very poor family. And His family noted that he was very renounced, and so they thought, we got to prevent him from getting too renounced. So they got him married. But that's a good way to keep someone at home. Same thing with Raghunath Das Goswami. They gave him a wife that was like the heavenly Indra's wife. And riches. It didn't keep him at home, though. So the same thing happened with Vamsi Das Babaji. He was married for about 2 months. No divorce. I mean, just like, poof, he was gone. He was gone. Actually, there's an interesting story about Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the same way. His family got him married, and he went to Vrindavan, and then his spiritual master said, you got to go back and see your wife. You know, you got to be responsible in this world. I'm not preaching to your householders about this, you know. So anyway, so he went back to his wife, stayed in the same room with her, and recited Bhagavatam all night long. The next day he left back to Vrindavan. These are the lives of great pure devotees. But the point is we shouldn't imitate them, because if we renounce, then that will be renunciation of the mode of passion. Renunciation of the mode of passion means you give something up, because it's very difficult. You just like say, oh, Hare Krishna, well, it's too difficult, I don't want to work a job. You know, going to the government every day is just too difficult. I just want to Gauranga. So that's, that's renunciation of the mode of passion. And Prabhupada didn't appreciate that. But these are great personalities. We don't imitate them. So Vamsi Das Babaji just left, and his life was so amazing as a absolutely pure devotee. Never chanted on beads. He never, when he worshipped deities, but he never did any mantras, except for the Hare Krishna Maha mantra. He just like, and he would talk to his deities. It's interesting, isn't it? Even when someone came to talk to him, he wouldn't talk to them directly. He would talk to his deities. He would say, you know, Gopal, hey, what do you think about this? I mean, even get angry with his deities sometimes. So here's absolutely pure devotee. He had unkempt hair. That means he never combed his hair with a peak of shaving his head. He acted like a madman. But he was such a great devotee that when he was in Jagannath Puri, and this is something that's happened with other devotees too, especially Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when they wanted to do the grain ceremony for him, the cart stopped in front of his house. The same thing happened with this Vamsi Das Babaji. He was such a great devotee, the cart of Lord Jagannath stopped, and it wouldn't move until he told the Lord, okay, it's time to move. Can you imagine that? The cart stops, and you say, Jagannath, you know, start moving again. That's an intimate relationship. Because the devotees on the highest platform, they do have that intimate relationship with the Lord. They can chastise Krishna. They can get angry with Krishna. Another time, just to show his exalted position, he didn't have a mobile phone, but just to show his exalted position, he wanted to bathe his deities. He was in Jagannath Puri. He wanted to bathe his deities, and he wanted the ocean to come to him, because he wanted to bathe his deities in the ocean. The ocean is a place of pilgrimage. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that when he bathed Haridas Thakur in the ocean, said from this day and forward, the ocean is a place of pilgrimage. So those devotees who go to Jagannath Puri go bathing in the ocean. So he wanted to bathe his deities in the ocean. So he was maybe 50 meters from the ocean. So he said, come here to the ocean. And there was a tidal wave. Not so big like you experience here in Fiji that washed him and everybody away. But the deities were bathed in that particular way. Another time is, one day he was just chanting in the middle of the night, and 50 young, beautiful ladies came dressed in white and offered obeisances to him and went away. Everybody was amazed. They saw that. Who are these? And women don't go out. In India, women didn't go out at night. Here it's Fiji. The women go out at night, dance in the nightclubs and everything like that. Isn't it? But and these were demigoddesses who came to offer obeisances to this great personality. Another interesting story about this great personality is one time he was cooking sweet rice for his deities. And then right before he offered it, he got really angry. He threw it away. He said, "How can you've already eaten better sweet rice in Vrindavan." He was actually in Mayapur when he said this. He said, "Now you've eaten sweet rice with palm tree gur." Palm tree gur is the sap of the palm tree that they cook down. And it's a natural sweetener. That's a sweetener that Krishna used when he was on the planet. Krishna didn't use sugar. He didn't come to Fiji and go to the sugar mill and buy this white sugar in bags. He used honey and palm tree stuff. So anyway, he said, "You've already taken this better sweet rice." And this was like 1,000 kilometers away where the Radha Govindaji temple was. So therefore, the devotees somehow or other communicated by telegraph or something like that with the Radha Govinda temple and said, "Did Krishna actually get sweet rice with palm tree gur that day?" And they sent a telegraph back, "Yeah, he had it that day." So, I mean, this is such an exalted person. And he would cure people of diseases. There was one man outside of his house, his kutir, who had cholera, and he was dying. And he was just at the point of leaving his body, and Vamsi Das came out, and he gave him a tulsi leaf. And then the guy stood up, Haribol, walked away. So this is the sort of devotee who doesn't have to follow the regulations and rules and regulations. Are any of you on that platform? Raise your hand. Oh, Jivannath, you're raising your hand. He raised his hand, yeah. Halfway up. He's not sure. So, in other words, therefore we have to follow. And you have other devotees too. I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was reading this verse. Who are avadutas? I mean, even Lord Shiva's an avaduta. He's naked. He dances in ecstasy. Lord Rishabhadev acted like an avaduta. People were actually making fun of him and throwing things at him and passing air in front of him. But he was also able to make his stool so fragrant, even though his stool was on his body, it was fragrant. So these are different avadutas, and of course, Vidura became an avaduta when he saw that his preaching was fruitless. It's described that what happened is, it's in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Vidura was preaching to Dhritarashtra. And then he was insulted by Duryodhana, who is the demoniac son of Dhritarashtra. Of course, Dhritarashtra had 100 demoniac sons. He didn't have a lack of demon sons. So, and then he just left the kingdom. And it's described he acted like an avaduta. And later on, there's a story when Vidura was getting ready to leave the planet, after he had accompanied Dhritarashtra to the forest, Vidura put stones in his mouth, and so he couldn't speak. And so in this way he left this world. Another example of avaduta would be in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you have Meenaketan or Ramdas, who was a great devotee of Lord Nityananda and an exhibit, Lord Balaram, Nityananda, and he exhibited all the symptoms of ecstasy. And even Lord Nityananda was an avaduta. So as far as ourselves, we have to follow the principles very strictly, because we are prone to come again under the material energy. Just like when you first start a fire, we were talking about fire, potential energy within wood. So when you first start a fire, it can really go out really quickly. All it takes is a gust of wind, a little water, or inattention, and the fire goes out. When it's blazing, it can engulf the whole world. Like someone who's a pure devotee, he's like a fire that's blazing that could change or purify the whole world. But right now, we're just like the match. You know, you strike the match, and it's there. And if you're not careful, then the fire can go out and again become covered. Or as Prabhupada would give that interesting story, Punar Mushika Bhava, again become what you were before. Of course, Mushika means mouse. So again become what you were before. So anybody who neglects the principles, unless they're in one of these avadutas that I mentioned before, or great pure devotees or whatever, then whatever they were before, that's what they become. And actually, there was an interesting story. One time, Prabhupada was giving initiation to someone, and the devotees were saying, but he's just a new devotee. And he was even giving him sannyas. He's just a new devotee. What if he falls down? And because he was a very exalted person to begin with, Prabhupada said, if he falls down, he'll fall down to the mode of goodness. I think you know who I'm talking about. He'll fall down to the mode of goodness. But for the rest of us, if we fall down, whoo! I mean, you'll see us in the discos at night. Or, God knows what'll happen. So, anyway, we shouldn't fall down even to the mode of goodness. That's the point. But we have to be extremely scared of Krishna's illusory energy. I'm scared. Like Prabhupada's also exhibiting the humility of a great devotee. He said, when the devotees asked him how he was praying, he said, I'm praying not to fall into Maya. Because that energy is there. We can become extinguished very, very quickly. So, on that happy note, so any questions or comments about anything we said? We have 5 more minutes of class. Gurgamuni?
How much scope is there in our society for this avaduta or so-called avaduta behavior or some eccentric behavior?
No scope. No scope. Why is that? Because we're servants of Prabhupada. Even if one is on that platform, yad yad achariti shreshtas tatare vetaro janaha. It's our duties to act properly. Duty to act properly. Even Krishna says the same thing. I mean, we're part of a society. Let's say there's some greatly advanced devotee who starts acting like that. Guess what will happen? Can anyone guess? Other people will do the same thing. You know, if I, for example, I'm not an advanced devotee, but anyway, if I started getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning and eating any damn thing, you know, not offering the food, talking to my Govardhan Shilas, you know, yelling at them. I mean, you probably put pictures of it on Facebook and think this is really great. Guru Maharaj is just like really advanced in Krishna consciousness. And then you have a whole bunch of people doing the same thing. What to speak if I put on a sari? I'd look pretty bad anyway. But let's say if I did something like that, then people would imitate. People would imitate. So it's a responsibility of those who are greatly advanced or leaders or shrestras or examples in society to set an example so those who are on the lowest platform don't deviate. So no, we don't have a place for that in our society. Prabhupada never indicated that we would have a place for avadutas in our society. I mean, the Goswamis, all the preachers, they're not avadutas, but when at the final stage of life, yeah, maybe Gargamuni, at the final stage of your life, you can let your hair grow and if there's any left. I mean, by joining ISKCON, it's guaranteed you lose your hair. And especially engaging in responsible management activities, that is the best way to have hair loss. So anyway, so maybe at the final few days, obviously, I mean, even Haridas Thakur, as he was getting ready to leave this world, even though generally he set the example of perfect Vaidhi Bhakti, Lord Chaitanya said, you don't have to chant your rounds anymore, you've given your example, etc. And then he was able to hold the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya as he left this world. But, at that stage, don't worry about getting up for Mangalarti. All right? You have my permission at that stage. But right now, you have a responsibility. All of us have that responsibility, even if we don't feel like it. Just like, I get up early in the morning. Sometimes the body doesn't like it. I mean, I have to be honest, the body is not just like an ecstasy. Sometimes we got a stomach ache, sometimes we got a headache. And we get up, we set an example. This is my duty. All right, any other questions? You got, yeah.
What would be the striking balance between humility and leadership?
Humility and what?
Leadership. Because sometimes as leaders, you have to be decisive to make something.
Yeah, you got to be decisive, but when you it's an interesting question you're asking, because you're dealing with voluntary people here. See, it's a little bit different than working in the government like you're working, because people know if they don't come up to the mark, they're out of a job. I mean, even you have the minister looking down, isn't it? He's just looking. Do you have a camera in your office that he's watching you all the time? No. We have cameras here, so anyway. So the minister's looking down and he's thinking, let's see if he performs. Then he gets a permanent position. But if he performed too much, maybe he wants my position. So, isn't it true? So you can't be too good and you can't be too bad in the workplace. But in Krishna, and because people want to keep their jobs. But in the Krishna conscious movement, the Prabhupada said we have to instill in people a voluntary spirit of service. So the leadership is a lot different in a nonprofit organization or volunteer organization. Volunteer organization is just, you inspire people and you have to request rather than order. I mean, certain times, the guru can, not all the time, the guru can say, do this, do that. But generally, it has to be inspirational type of leadership. So, yeah, that's the answer to the question. Yeah.
Even Samay said that people don't leave job because of
Yeah, that's true.
job itself, but because of bosses.
Because of the bosses. That's true. That's true. So, yeah, so even in the corporate world, it's getting like that too. Especially if people have alternatives. If people don't have alternatives, if it's another thing. But here in the movement, people do have alternatives. There's Maya or Krishna, but or they can just become, they can just become half in the movement, which means whenever there's prasadam, they show up. That's like a concession. I don't want to serve the movement, but I'll serve with my tongue. So, yeah, prasadam means mercy. So the leader should be, people should want to follow. People should love the leaders and be inspired by the leaders. Yeah, even now, it's nice you said that. Even in the corporate field, it should be like that. But especially nonprofit management has its challenges that are unique. And there's books written about that. So But anyway, we should inspire people.
What happens is that you could be leaders, but then if you get humility, then Prabhu fall in the Lord. So that's what sometimes,
Yeah.
whether the leader is humble for saying that or it's really not modeling the way it should be.
That's an interesting point. Well, let's define humility. Humility doesn't mean just to be, just like really soft-spoken and everything like that. Humility means to take Krishna's desire, and the Guru's desire is most important. Which means sometimes being humble means screaming at someone. Because you're saving them. And if you don't, just let's say, if someone is on the street and there's a car that's going to hit them, you say, "Oh, I'm humble. Would you get out of the way?" And they get hit, then you're responsible. So you got to yell at that point, "Hey, get out of the way!" Or Maya's coming down the street, whatever. Snap out of it, if necessary. So it requires some discrimination as to what's the best methodology. Humility doesn't mean just to speak softly. Humility means to do what's best for Krishna. And for others, to set a good example. I mean, setting an example, Prabhupada said example is better than precept. Precept means instruction. So you can say so many things, but example speaks louder than what a person says. All right, I think we have to end now. All right, thank you very much. All glories to His divine